Yo, alright, so yeah, it's been a minute, and this is just a very random video that, I decided to make. Completely unscripted, by the way, so whenever I sound completely scatterbrained, that's why. Kinda like the old school video. But I just wanted to talk about this because it's cool. I think games are cool, and I like talking about them. Especially game design, I really like it. And my victim for today, I want to talk a bit about Limbus Company's power creep issue, if you want to call it that, because I mean, yeah, that's just a thing I felt like talking about. So Limbus Company and actually free-to-play games in general is no stranger to power creep. I mean, it's just how that happens in a lot of games. For anyone who doesn't know what power creep is, it's when new content generally trends in a way that it's better than anything that was previously released. So like, for example, in Hearthstone, cards that were released 4 years ago will on average tend to be worse than ones that were released like a few days ago. For the sake of the topic Limbus Company, all the IDs that were released right at the start of the game have generally aged very poorly, and there's almost always a better option nowadays. And IDs that used to be extremely good now just don't matter as much. Like, I even pulled the one who grips the other day, and I just didn't care at all. Don't question how. I pulled the one who grips, by the way. I just did. Don't worry about it. So, to first preface my general opinion on Power Creep and Olympus, I don't really mind it that much. It's not that deep. It's a game. It's just a game. It's not competitive in any way. It's a fully single-player experience except for a few co-op features. It's not like people are trying to be better than anyone else. It's not like something like Clash Royale or Hearthstone or whatever, where it has any change to the game has a tangible effect on other players whether or not they choose to interact with that content. Limbus, you pick exactly what you do, and the only thing that limits what you do is what is available to you. Just because, for example, like you didn't pull the Index Nurse Father Yi Song, yes, we'll talk about him later, just because you haven't pulled him yet, and other people have, doesn't mean that they have an advantage over you. It just means that your experience with the game is different. But also, speaking of which, if you haven't pulled him, you probably should. Like, right now, go do that. Goddamn. Grind into Valas if you need to, I don't care. But if this was like a competitive game, then Power Creep would be much more important and prevalent. But since it is a single player, and whatever changes they make to the game is effectively just an impact on how you can choose to play the game. If you don't like the broken identities, then you can just not use them. And it doesn't really stop anything. It just means that you won't be using the most effective tactic you can. You can use any tactic you want. You want to use the old Dwarf Corp units? Go ahead. No one's stopping you. Do you want to just use the extremely powerful IDs and just probably steamroll everything? You can do that as well. Hell, I usually do that because I'm bad at team building. I did recently build a Bleed team though, so that was pretty cool. So, but like in the background, a lot of these IDs are top tier if you look at the Great Limbus Library, or GLL as I'll refer to it from now on, if I do refer to it again. Like Malbranch, Adept Faust, Lord of Hongyang, Honglu, Indian Exynos Father Yi Song, and then plenty of others that I just didn't use, like Zhong's Office Rep or the Manager of La Mancha Land. Both of those IDs that exist, they're in top tier. I just didn't want to use them for this team because I just liked using the IDs that I liked, which included some that weren't necessarily top tier. I do have Night of Despair in there. Look, I used the strong things, alright? Make fun of me if you want. That's honestly pretty valid at this point. But still, just because there are these really strong IDs, and I choose to use them, does that influence your experience with the game? Probably not. And now I actually get to talk about why power creep is probably happening, rather than just why I don't tremendously care if it does happen. Actually, I kind of do like that happens, which I'll also explain. So, general power creep is going to happen in a game. I find that usually happens for one of three reasons. Either one, just money, if companies want to make as much money as possible. Two, they just like doing it generally to keep the game a bit more fresh and unique. Because, you know, if something's new is released and it's just bad, and then nobody uses it, then it may as well not be in the game. And then three, they release something really strong and they need something to counter it. I.e. that one thing that happened with Pilot, Shredder, and Hearthstone way too long ago. I keep mentioning Hearthstone. I've never played that game. Huh. Yeah, I'm referencing extra credits, by the way. If you want to know more about game design, you can probably go talk to those people, and they do a much better job than I do. So that's cool. It's not a bad idea. I want to talk about Limbus, though. So, I guess you have to look at me, other than all the other Limbus company-related YouTubers, who also have made deep dives on specific IDs and how they are or not strong. I'm just here to look at the generalist part. So, out of these, I would say that option one, for Limbus Company at least, is somewhat out of the question. You can pay a bunch of money to get these super strong dudes, but all I've done is just buy the Limbus Pass for Season 6, and I hate you all. For this season and the previous season, and sure, that's not necessarily the cheapest thing, but I mean, considering the amount of time, I think it was a pretty worthy investment. And even so, I still pulled Malbranch at Faust, and I had the spare Rodion. The Zhong's Office Rep Ishmael. I pulled the Prince of Lamanchalan one time. I got the Index Nurse Father like this. You can still get plenty of units without paying any money at all. Because the only thing that buying the Limbus Pass really contributed for me was more ego shards. And yeah, I excluded anyone that I sharded, like the Manager of Lamanchalan and the Lord of Honglu. The Lord of Hongyang. Both of those, yeah, I sharded them. Probably very much because of the fact that I did get the Limbus Pass. But still, you don't need it to still be able to play the game and get these new IDs. I mean, how perfect example, the Index Nurse Father. He is obviously extremely strong, and I don't think it's a mystery to anyone that he is really strong. And you've probably been watching the gameplay in the background. Like, have you seen that guy? Like, come on now. Look at him. What is this? How is this a thing? Yes, he's my new favorite ID because I love the Black Silence. Just, come on. Man, you can't argue that this isn't one of the new strongest IDs in the game, if not the strongest. It would take a lot to overthrow Malbranch faster. Maybe this guy does it though. I personally like him way more than Malbranch Faust, so how about that? But this new guy is a very obvious instance of power creep. I mean, he was even meant to be strong, considering Rian's significance in the Kanto 9 story that I haven't played yet. But even despite that, you would think for plenty of companies that want to make a lot of money, they make this guy not very easy to get. They make him pretty rare. I mean, like, as an example of another free-to-play game I played a lot, Brawl Stars, which I fell out of, they would add new characters, and if they were in the mythic or legendary rarities, you just wouldn't really be able to get them that much. And by the time that you could try and get them, there's probably new characters out already that were then also really strong. So I think that's an example of where the company did just want to make money. But in Limbus, I pulled the Nurse Father on literally my first pull, which sure, that was about a 14.5% chance, but still, a 14.5% chance for the ID every time you do a 10 pull is not that rare. It really isn't. It's fairly common, and plenty of people I know have pulled him naturally. I mean, hell, you can't even dispense him yet. So everyone that you see who has him got it through randomness and likely did not have to spend money to get that lunacy. There's ways to get around it just by being a free-to-play. So, if this was an attempt to get into your wallet, Project Moon could do a way better job than this. But they didn't. And I wouldn't say that's really to balance out anything either. I mean, yeah, plenty of new ideas have been added that are really strong, but you can't really counter a new identity. I mean, you can compete with old ones, sure, but really, you can't exactly just completely shut down an identity from ever working again just because you release a new one. I mean, sure, you can release something that is generally better in more situations. I mean, when the index notes for the Yisong pretty much invalidates Psalm Lament, but you can still use Psalm Lament, and it still works just as well. Just because the Nurse Father Yisong shows up doesn't mean that you can never use Psalm Lament again, and if you don't have the index Nurse Father, then you're just screwed. That's not how that works. Because, once again, you don't compete with people in Limbus Company. It's just you go in to controlled enemies, and then you fight them. You not fight other players. I mean, sure, there's the sections where you do mirror fights in, like, a Faction Railway or something. But, come on. That doesn't count. It's not other people. So, presumably the only reason that they really would be doing Power Creep right now, from at least out of the 3 reasons that I gave from a game design standpoint, would be they just want to keep the game more interesting, which they do a very good job of. Considering that it's not that difficult to get new identities, or the really strong identities, and the fact that since they're newer, that can make them a bit easy to get sometimes. Because of that, people can still use really strong things without spending money, and then when they pull a new really strong thing, they have a new way to play the game, which is very cool. When you start Limbus Company, you had basically nothing, and you actually had to use the LCB IDs. And then whenever you got a new identity, you probably always were like, oh, that's cool, I should try using it. And if you got a new 3-star, especially your first 3-star, I think everyone remembers those ones, or the first time you got a pull that you really wanted, any of those, you would just be like, wow, that's really cool, and I'm really excited to go use it. That's just what you did, and that's exactly what every new identity does. Whenever I pull a new identity, knowing full well that was chance-based, but still likely, I would still get excited about it, because I get to go use it in my next game and go see how it does. And it does pretty well. A lot of the time, because of this whole power creep thing. New identities will never be bad. They'll always have a purpose. I mean, if you look at the GLL, pretty much the lowest that new identities have been ranked have been S tier, which granted it goes up to triple S, but still, it's not very common for them to be rated below that. And there was Reindeer Rodion, and that's kind of it out of a bunch of the new IDs. And if we're looking at just Season 7, we've gotten very hard hits so far. Like, we've gotten Ujit Otis, Index Dawn, obviously Nurse Father. It's not very easy to point to an ID that's just like, why would I use this when I can use something else? I mean, sure, there's not much of a reason for Reindeer Rodion still around, but not a huge reason for it. And when that happened, and nobody really cared about it, then that just meant, cool, there was a new idea in the game that nobody cared about. Neat. But then that's just boring. If people don't use the new content or interact with it at all, then it basically shouldn't, it just doesn't really have a purpose in the game. So by making new IDs somewhat strong and generally trending up the power curve, people don't or can't just keep using the same strategy forever. Actually, I wouldn't have mentioned the thing about can't use the same strategy forever. In competitive games, yeah, that's a thing. Like, Furnace got released in Clash Royale, and if you weren't using Furnace, you were objectively doing something wrong. In Limbus, those old warp IDs that almost all have universally better options by now, those guys are still capable of being used. It's a lot harder to do so compared to a lot of other identities, but they didn't, get nerfed and now they're bad and can't be used. They absolutely still can. And plenty of people do so and have done so. It's completely up to preference. And when new things get released and that makes you use a new strategy, that means that the gameplay becomes more interesting. Because if you use the same strategy for several hours, constantly, every single time, that gets boring after a while. You don't do anything differently. You're not building a new team. You're not using a new identity or ego to improve your strategy. You're just repeating the same thing over and over, and it keeps working. Nice. Good job. Gold star. But wouldn't you want to try something new? Wouldn't you want your strategy to be a bit different every so often? Well, releasing new identities that are stronger, I think, leads into that. And makes it a bit more fun. And also, sometimes an idea will be added to an archetype. And then, if you were struggling with that archetype, you can now actually use it a bit better. And like when Night of Despair was released and became the best syncing idea in the game, then whoever liked using syncing, there you go. You have a new toy to play with. And since it's pretty dang strong, then you actually do have a reason to use it. And thus you will. And then, now that syncing's stronger, you could have a more fun time with your Spice Bush. Cool. What's the bad part here? I seriously, for Limbus Company, do not find a good reason on why Power Creep should be completely stopped, and that all IDs should aim to be middle of the road. It just doesn't make sense to me. Especially considering that if things are added to our basic foundations of the story, like Lord of Fong Yang, very instrumental to the story. Index Nurse Father, very instrumental to the story. The manager of La Mancha Land, literally one of the main characters of the game, if you think about it. Wild Hunt Heathcliff, likewise. They're just the bad end versions of existing characters that are that you interact with throughout the entire game. I understand why those ones are really strong, and that means that people care to use them, and anyone who really likes those antagonists, you know, Wild Hunt or Earl King, and then Sancho, anyone who likes those characters, you can now use them, and they're really strong, so you'll really like using them, and it really feels like you're using the character from the story. If they were just like, oh yeah, it's just like a guy, then it just turned into all those old memes about the boss when you fight him and the boss when you unlock him. But in Limbus, the boss when you unlock them is as strong as the bosses when you fought them, which is really cool. It keeps the game interesting. I've said that like a million times by now. So, yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts on Limbus Company Power Creep. And also, I'm very much still waiting for the next Walpurgis Night because it's been since like November. I don't know where it is, and I know that the next one's going to be LobCorp based, but I'm secretly hoping for a Zhao identity one of these days. Please, I beg of you, Project Moon, I will sacrifice my soul to your entire studio to get a Zhao identity. She is really cool, also I want to light things on fire without being inferior. Because I can just use Bleed or Rupture. Seriously, can Burn be stronger one of these days? Like, it just doesn't do anything. It procs so infrequently. And when you look at everything else, as long as you can build up